"Daddy, look at Mommy." The homeless woman was just like her, and the rich man was shocked. "Daddy, that lady over there looks exactly like Mommy," yelled the 8-year-old boy, pulling hard on his father's coat sleeve. Michael Harrison, who ran one of Chicago's biggest tech companies, was walking out of an expensive restaurant when his life changed forever. The woman sitting on the street in dirty clothes and holding a sign asking for money had the same exact face as Sarah, his wife, who had died from cancer 3 years earlier. She didn't just look similar. She was exactly the same. Michael felt his knees get weak. His heart beat so fast he thought it might explode. How could a homeless person have the same face as the woman he loved more than anything? "This can't be real," he whispered, holding his son Tommy's hand tight. He couldn't stop looking at the woman who was slowly looking through a plastic bag, not knowing she was shocking someone just a few feet away. Kesha Williams, age 34, never thought anyone would look at her with such surprise. When she was 15, she ran away from her last mean foster home. Since then, the streets of Chicago had been her only home. She had spent 20 years trying to survive, while being invisible, getting pushed around, ignored, and treated like garbage by people who didn't even see her as human. But right now, something was different. A white man in an expensive suit was staring at her like he had seen a ghost. Next to him, a little blond boy was pointing at her with big eyes. "Sir, are you all right?" asked the restaurant security guard. Seeing Michael standing like a statue in the middle of the busy sidewalk, Michael shook his head, trying to wake up from this dream. This was impossible. Sarah had always said she was an only child. Her parents had said the same thing at her funeral. She had no sisters, especially not a twin sister living on the streets. But those brown eyes, the way she smiled when someone gave her money, even how she moved her head when she was thinking, it was Sarah. Every part of her face, every expression looked the same. "Daddy, why are you crying?" Tommy pulled at his father's sleeve again. Michael didn't even know tears were running down his face. He had spent 20 years building a huge business, dealing with the toughest people on Wall Street, and now a simple accident on the street had knocked him down completely. Kesha noticed the movement and looked up. For just a moment they stared at each other. She saw something in his eyes that she had never seen before. He looked at her like he knew her from somewhere impossible. "Excuse me." Michael walked over, slowly, his voice shaking. "May I ask your name?" Kesha pulled back. Rich men who came up to her on the streets never had good reasons. "Kesha," she said quietly, ready to run away if she needed to. "Kesha Williams." Her eyes got big. How did he know her last name? No one had called her by her full name in many years. On the streets, she was just Kay, the invisible woman who slept in alleys and ate leftover food. Michael took out his phone. With shaking hands, found a photo of Sarah and showed it to her. "Do you know this woman?" Kesha looked at the screen and almost fell over. It was like looking at herself, but in expensive clothes and with nice hair. Every detail of her face was exactly the same as what she saw when she looked in mirrors. Who is she?" Kesha asked, her voice coming out like a scared whisper. "She was my wife. She died 3 years ago." Michael bent down to her level. "And you look exactly like her." Right then, as hundreds of people walked by on the sidewalk, not knowing about the amazing thing happening in front of them, 2 lives were about to connect, in a way neither could have imagined. But Michael didn't know yet that some truths can destroy entire families. If your heart is beating fast with this impossible story, keep reading, because what happens next will show how a simple meeting can uncover secrets that have been hidden for many years. Days after the impossible meeting, Michael couldn't think about anything else. He had hired James Mitchell, the best private detective in Chicago, but the first information he got hit him like a punch to the gut. Kesha Williams 34 years old, no official birth papers. She was in 12 different foster homes until she was 15. History of abuse, always running away, on the streets ever since. James stopped, watching Michael's face. Mike, this woman has no family on record. There's no legal connection to your wife. Michael hit his fist on the office desk. That's impossible, James. You saw the photos I sent you. They look exactly the same. This can't be just chance. Listen, I've seen twins who were separated at birth before. Usually there's an adoption record, documents, some kind of clue. There's nothing here. It's like someone purposely erased every trace of her life. Meanwhile, across town, Margaret Blackwood, Sarah's mother, got a worried call from her sister, Helen. Maggie, you need to know. I saw Michael yesterday talking to that woman on the street downtown, the one who looks like... You know who. Helen whispered into the phone. What if he finds out what we did 34 years ago? Margaret closed her eyes. At 71, she thought the secret was buried forever. Helen, we promised to never talk about this again. Sarah never knew, and Michael must never find out. But what if she remembers? What if someone finds the papers we couldn't destroy? Margaret felt scared. What papers? You said you burned everything. I kept a copy of the original papers. I was afraid I might need them later. They've been in my safe for 34 years. Good. You crazy? Go get them now and destroy them right away. While the two women were planning, Michael had done something they didn't expect. He took Kesha to get a DNA test, offering her $1,000 just to agree to find out if she had any living family. Why are you doing this? Kesha asked at the lab, still suspicious but touched by Michael's real kindness. No one ever cared where I came from. Because everyone deserves to know who they are, Michael said, holding his son's hand. And because something tells me that your story is connected to ours. Tommy, with the honest way children speak, said, If you're family to Mom, that means you're family to us too, right? Kesha's eyes filled with tears. For 20 years, no one had included her anywhere, but Margaret Blackwood wasn't going to let this happen. The next day, she called Dr. Harrison, the head of Michael's company's board of directors. Richard, I need to talk to you about your partner. Michael is acting in a way that worries me. He's getting involved with the wrong people and putting our grandson in dangerous situations. As someone responsible for billions in investments, I think you should know. Dr. Harrison, a careful and calculating man, didn't like what he heard. Margaret, do you think Michael is making bad decisions? Could this hurt the company? I'm just worried about my grandson's safety and the good name Sarah built for our family. This woman might be tricking him, using her resemblance to Sarah. What Margaret didn't know was that Michael had put recording devices in his office. After getting threats from competitors, her entire conversation with Dr. Harrison was being recorded automatically. James called the next day with a disturbing discovery. Mike, I got access to the old social services files. 34 years ago, 2 black twin girls were separated at birth. One was adopted. No public record of who adopted her. The other went into foster care. And guess where Sarah was registered at that time? Here's where it gets interesting. Sarah Blackwood is listed as informally adopted by the Blackwood family. No legal proceedings, no official paperwork. Mike, I think your wife's family bought one of the twins and left the other one behind. Michael felt his world fall apart. You're saying that Margaret and Helen chose one child and left her sister to die in the system? And they managed to keep it secret for 34 years? That night, Michael got the results that would change everything. Mike, you need to sit down. The DNA test results. Keisha Williams is a 99.7% match to Sarah's genetic samples. They are twin sisters. The silence on the phone lasted forever. Michael looked at the wedding photo on his bedside table. Sarah was smiling happily next to her mother and Aunt Helen. The three women had kept a secret that destroyed one life and almost cost another. James, I need you to find everything. Every document, every payment, every trace of this deal. And I want you to put hidden cameras in Margaret's house. If she still has hidden evidence, we're going to find it. Mike, that could be invasion of privacy. They separated twin sisters, James. They condemned one innocent child to 20 years on the streets while raising the other in luxury. That's not invasion of privacy. That's justice. As Kesha slept in her first clean bed in many years, she had no idea that her life was about to change, but she also didn't know that some people would do anything to keep their secrets buried, including trying to permanently remove her from Michael's life. What Margaret never imagined was that her every move to keep Kesha away was being documented, recorded, and saved. The web of lies she had created for 34 years was about to fall apart in a big way. A week later, Michael set up dinner at Margaret's house. She thought she had finally gotten him away from Kesha through Dr. Harrison, who was already pressuring Michael to distance himself from the embarrassing situation to protect the company. "Honey, I'm so glad you've come to your senses," Margaret smiled falsely, pouring wine in the fancy living room where photos of Sarah decorated every table. That woman was clearly disturbed, trying to take advantage of your pain. "You're right, Margaret. I need to protect my family." Michael paused dramatically, watching her shoulders relax with relief. "That's why I brought some things to show you." He put a tablet on the coffee table and pressed play. Margaret's voice echoed through the room, with perfect clarity. "What if he finds out about what we did 34 years ago?" The wine glass fell from Margaret's hand, breaking on the marble floor. Helen, who was visiting, turned white as a ghost. "How did you—" Margaret whispered, her hands shaking uncontrollably. "Recording devices in my office picked up not just one but 4 conversations of you plotting against Keisha." Michael moved his finger across the screen carefully. "But wait, there's more." He played another recording. Helen's voice saying, "I kept a copy of the original papers. They've been in my safe for 34 years. Helen stood up quickly, knocking over her chair. "Margaret, you said he'd never find out. James didn't just find the payment records." "Margaret, he found all the documents you hid." Michael opened a folder, spreading papers across the table. $15,000 upfront to the orphanage director, another $5,000 to fake documents, 3 renewals of the silence agreement. And here, he pulled out a yellowed piece of paper, the original birth certificate showing twin girls, Sarah and Kesha Williams. Margaret tried to grab the documents, but Michael was faster. "No, no, no. Now it's time for you to hear the truth you've been hiding for 34 years. Michael, you don't understand the pressure we were under," Helen tried to explain. "I understand perfectly. 2 white middle-class women decided to play God with the lives of 2 black children. You chose which one deserved a good life and which one deserved to die on the streets." At that moment, the doorbell rang. Michael opened the door and Keisha walked in, followed by James, 3 local TV reporters, and 2 civil rights lawyers. "Surprise, Margaret. Keisha deserves to hear the truth from your own mouth, and so does the world." The cameras were already rolling, broadcasting live to thousands of viewers. Margaret stood there shocked, realizing how big this was. "You can't do this to us. We raised Sarah with love. We gave her a good life." "Love?" Kesha spoke for the first time, her voice cutting through the air like a sharp knife. "You call it love to buy a child like a thing, To condemn her sister to live like an animal for 20 years? The lead reporter came over with her microphone. Mrs. Blackwood, our viewers would like to know, how do you justify separating twin sisters and condemning one of them to a life of misery? Margaret looked desperately at the cameras, realizing that her reputation built over decades was being destroyed live on television. We were going to get her back when our situation got better. Lies, James interrupted, pulling out more documents. You renewed the non-disclosure agreement 3 times in 1995, 2001, and 2007. You paid a total of $45,000 over the years to make sure that Kesha was never found, even when she ran away at age 15 and was living on the streets. Helen fell onto the sofa, crying loudly. Margaret, I told you to stop. I told you it was too cruel, but you were afraid she would show up and ruin our life. Shut up, Helen. Margaret screamed, completely losing the control she had kept for 71 years. Michael turned to the cameras. I want everyone to see who Margaret Blackwood really is. A woman who bought one child, abandoned another, and paid for decades to keep this crime a secret. Kesha walked up to Margaret, her dignity unbroken even after so much pain. While Sarah grew up in mansions, went to private schools, and had everything she wanted, I slept in alleys, looked for food in the garbage, and was beaten just for existing. And you knew. You always knew. Margaret tried one last desperate move. Kesha, we can talk in private. I can pay you money to make up for this. Pay me? Kesha laughed bitterly. You think money can erase 20 years of hunger, of cold, of being treated like human trash? I don't want your dirty money. I want the world to know who you really are. At that moment, Michael's phone rang. It was Dr. Harrison. Michael answered on speakerphone so everyone could hear. Michael, I just watched the live broadcast. The company wants to officially state that Margaret Blackwood is permanently banned from any involvement in the Harrison family business. Her attempts at manipulation have been uncovered and documented. You have our full support. Margaret's face turned gray. In just a few minutes, she had lost her reputation, her influence over Michael, her access to her grandson, and now even any financial connection to the empire Sarah had helped build. The cameras captured every second of her complete collapse. The live comments were already in the hundreds, with people expressing anger at the cruelty done to Kesha. You've destroyed me, Margaret whispered, looking around the room that no longer felt like hers. No, Kesha replied with devastating calm. You destroyed yourselves. I just survived. As Margaret and Helen were escorted out of their own home by lawyers who were already preparing criminal charges for child trafficking and document forgery. One question remained. How would Tommy react when he found out he had an aunt who had been purposely hidden from him? And would it be possible for Michael and Kesha to build a real family on the ruins of so many decades of lies and cruelty? 6 months after the live broadcast that destroyed Margaret Blackwood, Kesha Williams looked completely different. Not just physically, although medical care, proper food, and a safe place to sleep had completely changed how she looked, but mainly in her posture and confidence. Aunt Kesha, are you coming to my school presentation? Tommy asked as they ate breakfast in the house Michael had bought for the 3 of them to live together. I wouldn't miss it for anything, she replied, fixing the boy's tie. Your mother, Sarah, would be proud to see how brave and kind you've become. The Sarah and Kesha Williams Foundation had become one of the largest homeless help organizations in Chicago. In just 6 months, it had taken 847 people off the streets, reunited 23 families separated by the system, and created the first national program to track down lost siblings. Kesha was not only the executive director, but also the leading advocate for the rights of society's invisible people. "Ms. Williams," said the assistant, entering the elegant office overlooking the city. "CNN has confirmed the interview for tomorrow. They want to talk about the bill being voted on in Congress, and more donations have come in, $2.3 million this week alone." The Kesha's law bill, which required adoption agencies to keep permanent accessible records of separated siblings, had gained the support of 43 senators after her story went viral internationally. 3 multinational companies had offered Kesha consulting contracts to develop social responsibility programs. Forbes included her in its 40 Under 40 list as the most influential activist of the year. Universities from Harvard to Oxford invited her to speak on strength and social change. Meanwhile, Margaret Blackwood faced her 3rd criminal hearing at the Illinois State Prison. The scandal had completely destroyed her life. Friends of decades had turned away. Her church had kicked her out. Her house had been sold to pay fines, and even Helen had moved to another state, changed her name, and denied any relationship. "You're Margaret Blackwood," said the judge. "In addition to the 5 years in prison already given, you have been found guilty of new crimes discovered during the investigation: tax evasion, money laundering, and organized crime. The new sentence is 15 additional years without the possibility of parole." The journalists crowding the courtroom recorded every second of her final downfall. Margaret, now gray-haired and worn down, looked very different from the powerful woman who had controlled destinies for decades. In the front row, Michael and Kesha watched in silence. There was no joy in revenge, only the quiet satisfaction of seeing justice served after 34 years. "She looks so small now," Kesha whispered to Michael. "Evil always seems smaller when it loses its power to cause harm," he replied. That night, the 3 of them had dinner together, as they did every day. Tommy excitedly told them about his history class where he had presented his project, Families Lost and Found, inspired by his own family's story. Kesha patiently helped. With math homework, using methods she had learned in night classes she was taking to complete her education. Michael watched the scene, still amazed at how the greatest tragedy of their lives had turned into the greatest miracle. "Dad," Tommy said suddenly, stopping mid-bite, "can I call Aunt Kesha my second mom?" Kesha felt her eyes fill with tears. After 34 years of believing she was unwanted and worthless, she finally had a family that chose her back. "Of course you can, sweetheart," she replied, hugging the boy who had become the son she never thought she would have. A year later, Kesha received Chicago's Hero of the Year award at a nationally televised ceremony. In her speech, which would go viral with over 50 million views, she said, Margaret Blackwood thought she could decide which child deserved love and which deserved abandonment. She believed that her wealth and privilege gave her the right to play God with human lives. But what she didn't understand is that true love cannot be bought, controlled, or destroyed by prejudice. Today, I have a family that loves me not because they have to, but because they choose to love me for the person I have become, not for the person she tried to keep me from being. The audience rose to a standing ovation that lasted 4 minutes. Margaret watched from prison on a small television in the cafeteria, finally realizing not only what she had lost, but the human potential she had tried to waste. Tommy grew up, knowing that family is built with daily choices of love, not just blood. Michael learned that sometimes we lose something precious to find something even more valuable. And Kesha discovered that being invisible for 20 years prepared her to use her voice even more powerfully when she was finally heard. "The best revenge against those who try to erase us," Kesha said in her last interview, is to shine so brightly that the whole world sees us. Margaret tried to condemn me to invisibility, but she ended up giving me the platform to help thousands of other invisible people be seen. She tried to break my soul, but she only showed me what I was truly made of. Today, 5 years later, Kesha's story is studied in law schools as an example of how the system can fail, but also how the truth always finds a way to the light. Her foundation has transformed more than 15,000 lives. The bill named after her has been passed in 47 states. Margaret learned too late that trying to control the fate of innocent children is not only cruel, it's a guaranteed way to destroy your own soul. Meanwhile, Kesha has turned her pain into purpose, her rejection into global acceptance, and her invisibility into a light that shows the path for thousands. If this story of family, justice, and overcoming hardship has touched your heart, keep following for more stories that prove that our greatest strength comes not from where we are born, but from how we choose to transform our most painful experiences into fuel to light up the world and rewrite not only our own history, but the history of all those who still live in the shadows, waiting for their chance to shine.